Hello, lovely Gender Networks people. Sorry I can't be with you this session. Um, I'm on holiday in Mallorca, so as much as I love you, that did win. But I still have a roundup of the news from the quarter. It, it's not as sunny as hopefully the weather is, but we'll proceed anyway. So first up, this is the former head of the FTSE Women in Leadership Review, who's just stepped down. She's issued a plea saying that we need to keep looking at the number of women in FTSE leadership positions. So 7 out of 10 leadership positions in FTSE 350 companies still go to men, should be 5 out of 10, really, if we were to have roughly gender equality. So she has stepped down, but there was still lots and lots of work to do, and we need to keep pushing on it. This is really interesting. It's going to be a theme that goes through the whole of this month's news, because it feels like there are a lot of people talking about how much still needs to happen, while at the same time things are kind of stepping backwards a bit. So something to look at. Deloitte has produced their annual Women at Work, a global outlook survey. It's 10,000 women, I think, or 5,000 women. Check. 5,000 women across 10 countries. There we go. Looking at their experiences of work and how it's shifted over the year. So the good news is that more women feel supported in talking about their mental health or personal health that's going on with them by their employers. The bad news is that 95% of women still feel that if they ask for any sort of flexible working arrangement, their career will be impacted from it, which is depressing, really. The thing that I'm really interested in at the moment actually is if we asked men that, how many of them would agree? And I actually think it would probably be higher than 95%. This is the thing that I think we're not talking about. We all know that asking for flexible work impacts your job. Not the doing of flexible work. That doesn't impact it. Get that right, you're fine. It's the asking for it. So if we could all just have a bit more honesty about that, get our fears out there, put out what we think might happen, perhaps the impact wouldn't be quite so terrible. My thought for the day. The Statista, big national statistics company, has released the overall weekly hours worked by gender. Overall, men still work more hours per week than women, but for men, it's kind of flatlining, maybe slightly coming down, and for women, it is going up. And actually, the last couple of years, you can see there's been a big shift upwards, which really plays into the next article, the extra shift, the unpaid emotional labour expected of women at work. So this is from the BBC, and it looked at all of that extra emotional labour work that women do in the workplace: birthday cards, checking in on people to see if they're okay, being asked to go in, check on people because the male boss has upset them and they think a woman would be better at dealing with that. That used to really annoy me. But that extra work is increasing, but not being valued, not being paid for. And also then discriminating against the women who are not naturally that way inclined. We've got to stop thinking of caring as a female thing as opposed to a human thing. Some women are really good at it. Some men are really good at it. Some women, sometimes I include myself in this, not so good at it. That's okay. We need to accept that. Apologies, that was my WhatsApp in the background. How can we expect mothers to return to work if we're so reluctant to allow fathers to stay at home? This is a really interesting article I found in The Guardian, written by a man who has been trying to apply for part-time work. And he has been facing basically people looking at him in bewilderment, being like, but why would you want this job? It's only part-time. And he wants to spend more time at home with his kids. He's the kind of primary caregiver. But actually the discrimination he's facing is in people not really believing that he only wants a part-time job. And that actually made me think about what might be my instinctive reaction if I had a part-time role going and a man applied for it. I hope that I would give them a completely equal interview and process, but maybe my instinctive reaction might be a little bit shocked. So we've got to start working on that for ourselves as well. Why paying women to have more babies won't work. This is from The Economist. The Economist has been writing some absolutely flipping bonkers articles about women recently. But this is one of the less bonkers, more interesting ones. It looks at countries around the world that are actually trying to increase their birth rate. They're really worried about low birth rates, meaning that we're going to have this massive crisis of huge numbers of retired elderly people needing looking after and not enough people in the workforce to support them. So they're trying to pay women to have babies, not literally pay them, but like offer benefits, offer allowances, etc., etc. And it's simply not working because actually the cost and impact of being the uh, supposed only caregiver, if your male other half is out to work all the time, it's just too much for women. They don't want it. So we actually need to look at how we improve childcare as a whole, how we improve our working lives as a whole, so that we can blend the both. Mental health still taboo for women at work. This is a report which says 2/3 of women are not comfortable talking about their mental health at work. That doesn't surprise me, to be honest. If we go back to the Deloitte report, you'll see that about half of women are comfortable talking about their mental health with their employers, or feel like they would have a good response from their employers, I think is probably a better way of putting it. Um, but that's kind of, I think that's when we're talking about mental health, in that I'm quite stressed out, or I think I'm going through burnout, or perhaps I'm worried that I'm not feeling as happy as I should be feeling, which is really important, but it doesn't take into account maybe some of the deeper, more serious, more chronic mental health conditions that we don't feel comfortable talking about as well. We know very little about neurodivergent women, and they may be overlooked at work. Really interesting article. I think this is from Fortune, which looks at how we support women to talk about their own neurodivergence in the workplace. If you think back to the article before, 2/3 of women aren't comfortable talking about mental health. When we talk about neurodivergence, most of us don't even have the language for it. We don't know how to talk about it. For women who have been kind of traditionally ignored in this area, so they won't have been diagnosed as children, they might be much more likely to get late diagnoses. How do we open up that conversation at work? And also, how do we make sure that we don't lose these women from the workplace, because they are valuable? And finally, really cheery headline to end this on: no equality for working women anywhere in the world. What can I tell you? It doesn't exist. But hopefully we are getting closer to it. It sounds like a miserable headline. There is some good news looking at like how things have improved and the areas in which they are improving. But we are not there yet. So if you're one of the many, many companies who've decided that maybe they don't want to invest as much money into diversity, equity, and inclusion this year, or perhaps it's not really necessary to support their women's networks as much as they have been in the past, this is why it's still important, because what we do here in this world matters and echoes all around the rest of the world. Um, and we don't want to get left behind. That is all my news from you for this quarter. I hope I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening.